Also, from Series 5 comes my number 6 choice, Vincent and the Doctor. Not much more needs to be said. I've kind of talked about this being the closest I think you can get to trying to pick a best of all time episode of Doctor Who. An episode that for me has a little bit of everything. It has an alien element, it has a historical element, you have an emphasis on artistry and sort of the mental instability of Vincent van Gogh or Van Gogh, depending on your preference, and the idea of all of these things coming together, a man being showed hope, who is still destined to have a doomed sort of life. It's just absolutely, pivotal, a pivotal episode in the history of Doctor Who that one should not go without seeing. So coming in at number 7, I've chosen The Doctor's Wife from Series 6, referencing the history of Doctor Who, and the romance, the on-again, off-again, timeless romance that the Doctor has with his very own TARDIS. His wife, for all intents and purposes, no offense, River Song, it just shows the bond the Doctor has, how lost, like a little puppy, he would be without the TARDIS, and how the TARDIS is there to reciprocate if only she could. Her love for him is equal. She stole away with him in very much the same manner he thought he was stealing away with her. And not much more needs to be said. It's quintessential Doctor Who viewing, in my opinion. Coming in at number 8 is a two-parter from Series 6, The Rebel Flesh and the Almost People. This is a very intriguing story to me that has to do with the duality of the psychology of the mind, of the human condition, and sort of, touches base on things like moral concerns, like cloning and, all those things that we face in science when we're looking at health crises. Well, can we use stem cells, or should we? Is it something we shouldn't be doing? Everything like that. It kind of has that slant to it, but it also has, because it's a sort of futuristic world setting, you have a bunch of characters who are very human, very natural, but of course they are mechanized. They're used to becoming doppelgangers, using this stuff called the flesh, which creates duplicates, and the Doctor even becomes one in this story, which presents a dilemma for Amy, his companion, of course. I absolutely love the dilemmas and the questions this two-parter raises that ends somewhat ambiguously as to, is it for the better or for the worse? It's kind of left to you, the viewer. And for that, I love a story that leaves you having to decide, what have I just seen? What are the questions representing? What are the answers for me personally? Love that. Coming in at number 9, The Girl Who Waited. Of course, anyone who's ever seen this episode knows how emotional this story is, as Amy is basically forced to live like 30 years of her life without the Doctor and without her fiancé, Rory, and she becomes, as a result, a very bitter, battered older woman who feels sort of a lack of that magic. She kind of gives up on hope, and she gives up on fighting and waiting it out. She's forced to wait. She doesn't give up on survival, because, of course, we see her taking on the automaton, mannequins, robots, whatever you want to call them, healers in this particular environment that they're in, this alien environment, where she's left on her own. She does fend for herself to keep herself alive, and you know that she's really waiting for the Doctor to return, but once he finally does, she's nothing but scathing and very sort of angry with him, even Rory to an extent, and then ultimately we lose her again. It's a very intriguing story on multiple levels, and so that's why it's here. Rounding out my 10th choice is probably the most controversial one on this list, The Rings of Akhaten. Why have I chosen this particular episode? Well, it's a story much like my very first episode of Modern Doctor Who that I ever saw, The End of the World, with, of course, the Ninth Doctor and Rose Tyler, being brought to that future where the planet Earth was going to be dying. We saw a lot of alien cultures for the first time. It was very whimsical, very edge-of-your-seat, intriguing, and stuff like that. It could be a little suspenseful. And this particular story has elements that are like that. I love the fact, though, that this is probably the most we see of Clara as far as being more than just a bubbly personality. We see her being very much more made flesh and more sort of an in-depth look at her character in her relationship with the young girl, who is, of course, very integral to the story with the performance of this song and everything like that, where they're sort of giving worship to a giant star or sun, whatever it was. It's just very fun and fascinating to me to see these alien cultures coming together to give worship in praise, and things going awry when things don't quite add up the way they're supposed to. Clara rises to the challenge of needing to save him through the use of, her own history and something very valuable to her. We see Matt Smith's performance just ramping it up to 11, as Spinal Tap might say, and, again, it has a lot of things that I just love about it. So I'm going to actually now pop an 11th on this particular series because I haven't touched base on any of the Christmas specials, and I've actually gone ahead and chosen my favorite, my best pick for all of the Christmas specials. Hands down goes to A Christmas Carol, because I always loved that story. I love the Alastair Sim Scrooge adaptation of that Charles Dickens classic. The idea of this ornery old man who has loved and lost, but only through a manipulation of history, of his own personal history by the Doctor, and the way the Doctor, uses temporal mechanics, the TARDIS, and timey-wiminess of the whole thing. Again, the atmosphere, it's almost a Victorian Gothic atmosphere, but it's an alien world, and you have fish who are able to fly on the air very magically. A giant shark, and riding that shark through the air on a sort of, shark-drawn buggy and everything like that. The romance of this particular character and his love interest as it develops throughout the story, seeing him grow up from a young boy looking at her and becoming this old man who knows he's going to be losing it in moments by the end of the story. And so, these are my top 10 choices for modern series stories, including the best of the Christmas specials, in my humble opinion. And otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. I hope this video finds you well. I'll catch you all later. Peace.